The morning sun poured gently over the streets of her quiet California neighborhood, but for Eleanor, the warmth did little to ease the chill in her heart. Today was supposed to be special. Her son, Michael, had promised he would bring the grandchildren over for a weekend visit. She had spent the whole week preparing. The spare room was neatly arranged with fresh linens, the kitchen stocked with their favorite snacks, and a tiny bouquet of sunflowers on the dining table, their golden petals bright against the soft white napkins. She had imagined the laughter of children filling the house again, the way it had when they were little, and the way Michael's smile always lit up his face when he saw her. Her phone buzzed, startling her from her thoughts. She expected a cheerful text from Michael, maybe a "see you soon" or a quick "can't wait to get there." But the message on the screen made her stomach drop. "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep things private." Her hands trembled as she reread it, hoping, praying that it was some kind of mistake, but no. The cold, indifferent words stared back at her like a verdict. Private, as if the home she had nurtured her son in, as if the love and care she had poured into their lives for decades, no longer mattered. For a moment she felt the world tilt, unsteady beneath her feet. The betrayal stung sharper than she could have imagined. How had it come to this? How could the son she had raised with unconditional love, who had once clung to her side with tears and scraped knees, now turn away because of another woman's preferences? She thought of the countless sacrifices she had made, late nights nursing him through fevers, emptying her savings to help him with school and rent, the quiet pride she carried as she watched him grow into the man he was today. And now, a simple text, cold and unfeeling, had reduced decades of love to nothing more than an inconvenience. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and relentless, and she sank into the kitchen chair, gripping the edge as if it could anchor her to reality. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator, the clock ticking on the wall, marking moments that would never be the same. She felt replaced, erased, an outsider to her own family, but amid the shock and sorrow, a flicker of something else emerged. Anger, not the blind, destructive kind, but a quiet, simmering resolve. She would not let this betrayal define her. Somewhere beneath the hurt, a seed of determination took root. If her son had been swayed by another, if she had been cast aside so easily, then she would find a way to remind him, and the family she loved, what loyalty, love, and truth really meant. Eleanor wiped her tears, straightened her back, and whispered to herself, her voice shaking but resolute, "I won't let this end like this." And with that, the first threads of her plan began to form, fragile but unstoppable. The days that followed Michael's cold message felt like walking through a fog. Eleanor went about her routines mechanically, making tea, tending to her small garden, and reading old letters from her son, letters that now felt bittersweet. She thought she knew her family, but the text had shattered that certainty. Questions gnawed at her constantly. Why now? How did it come to this? Had he ever really seen me? She began to notice subtle changes in Michael's behavior over the phone and in messages. Responses were clipped, polite but distant. He no longer asked about her health or her day. And there were small hints of discomfort, almost guilt, as though he had been caught in the middle of someone else's web. Slowly, a grim pattern emerged. His wife, Caroline, had been reshaping their family quietly, isolating Eleanor, and convincing Michael that distance was preferable. At first, Eleanor's heart ached with disbelief. How could someone so young, so full of life, be so easily influenced? But the pain gradually gave way to something else, a simmering determination. She remembered the years she had devoted to Michael, the nights spent awake when he was sick, the sacrifices she had made quietly, the moments of pride that no one could ever take from her. And now someone had tried to erase her, to rewrite history, to pretend her love and guidance had never mattered. Eleanor reached out to old friends and neighbors she trusted, people who had known her family for decades. Over coffee and cautious conversation, she pieced together stories of Caroline's manipulations, subtle digs, casual criticisms, moments meant to make Elinor seem intrusive or overbearing. Each story stung, but also clarified the path she needed to take. She realized that if she wanted her family back, she couldn't confront Caroline directly or demand Michael's attention. That approach would only confirm Caroline's narrative. She needed patience, observation, and strategy. In the evenings, Elinor would sit in her quiet living room, looking at photographs of Michael as a boy. His shy smile, the way he had held her hand as he learned to ride his bike, the proud little figure he had been at graduation. She remembered her promise to herself in the kitchen the morning of the text. She would not let this betrayal define her. And now she understood that reclaiming her place required more than emotion. It required cunning, foresight, and a steadfast belief in the truth of her love. The seed of her plan began to take root. She would gather evidence, observe, and create moments that revealed the reality of Caroline's manipulations, not with anger, but with clarity. She would remind Michael of the mother who had been there for him through every storm, the woman whose love had never wavered, the woman who deserved to be part of their lives. As Elinor sipped her tea one quiet night, she felt the first flicker of hope. The sorrow remained, but it had transformed into purpose. The journey ahead would be delicate, demanding both patience and courage, but she felt ready. She whispered into the stillness of the room, a quiet promise to herself and to her heart. They will see the truth, and when they do, nothing will ever erase what is mine. Elinor's days became a quiet symphony of observation and strategy. She moved like a shadow in her own life, listening carefully to phone calls, noticing small details in social media posts, and gently inquiring about family gatherings from mutual friends. She didn't confront anyone directly. She didn't need to. Her weapon was patience, and the truth had a way of surfacing when the stage was set properly. It began with small, seemingly innocent acts. At a local community event, Elinor casually mentioned a story from Michael's childhood, how he had spent an entire summer building a treehouse with her, how he had learned to trust and lead through her guidance. She didn't point fingers, didn't speak of Caroline, but the story resonated with a mutual friend who later relayed it to Michael. She watched quietly from a distance as small doubts flickered across his face when he realized the memories he had dismissed as irrelevant were still alive and cherished by those around him. Elinor also reached out to her grandchildren through small, thoughtful gestures, postcards with little drawings, handwritten letters tucked into their lunch boxes, and phone calls filled with encouragement and stories. Each act reminded them of the warmth and love that had always been part of her presence. Slowly, she saw the bonds rekindle, a shy smile here, a question there, a hug that lingered a little longer, tiny victories, yet immense in their significance. The real turning point came during a family dinner that Michael and Caroline had hosted. Elinor arrived with nothing but a calm demeanor, a warm smile, and an unassuming presence. She didn't demand attention, she didn't plead. Instead, she shared anecdotes, memories, and laughter that subtly highlighted the distance Caroline had tried to enforce. Michael couldn't help but notice the joy, the authenticity, and the love in Elinor's every word. And slowly, cracks began to appear in Caroline's carefully constructed facade. Her passive-aggressive comments faltered, her attempts to control conversation seemed forced, and the laughter Elinor inspired made Michael question why he had ever allowed her mother to be pushed away. Elinor's revenge was not loud or vengeful. It was sweeter than that. It was the quiet exposure of truth through love and consistency. She reminded everyone of the foundation she had built, the loyalty she had offered, and the unconditional support that no manipulation could erase. The realization dawned on Michael like sunlight through fog. He had been misled, distracted, and swayed by someone else's insecurities, but his mother's love had never wavered. By the end of the evening, Elinor left with a subtle smile playing at her lips. She hadn't humiliated anyone. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't forced the truth into confrontation. Yet, the damage to the illusion Caroline had created was undeniable. Michael's eyes lingered on Elinor with newfound clarity and regret, and even Caroline felt the shift, powerless to deny the mother's enduring presence. Elinor drove home that night with a sense of quiet triumph. Revenge, she realized, wasn't about anger. It was about revelation. It was about reminding the world of what was real, authentic, and lasting. And in that moment, she knew the final act was near. Reconciliation, healing, and the restoration of what had almost been stolen. The days that followed the dinner were quiet, yet charged with unspoken realizations. Michael avoided calls at first, as if wrestling with the weight of his own conscience. But Elinor's presence in small, consistent ways kept breaking through the walls that had been built. A message from a grandchild, a photo sent by Michael of the children, laughing over a shared memory. Each tiny gesture chipped away at the distance. Elinor responded with warmth, never reproach, never anger. Her strength lay in patience, in the unwavering light of her love. Finally, one late afternoon, her phone buzzed with a message that made her heart skip. "Mom, can we talk?" Her hands trembled as she read it, but the tremble was no longer fear. It was hope. They met at a small cafe, quiet enough for private conversation, but lively enough that no one would watch too closely. Michael arrived with a cautious smile, eyes shadowed with regret. Elinor's own heart was a mix of nervousness and relief, yet she greeted him as she always had, with warmth, dignity, and the reassurance of unconditional love. "I've been distant," Michael began, his voice heavy with guilt. "I let things happen between us that shouldn't have. I let her influence me in ways I didn't realize." Elinor reached across the table, her hand lightly brushing his. "I know," she said softly. "And I know you're realizing it now, but what matters is that you're here. You've remembered who we are, who we've always been." Tears welled in Michael's eyes as he nodded. The weight of his mother's patience and quiet wisdom settled on him. He apologized not just for the text, not just for the cold distance, but for every moment he had allowed manipulation to shadow the love that had never left him. Elinor didn't dwell on anger. She listened, she embraced, and she let the bond they had shared for decades begin to heal. Word spread slowly within the family. The grandchildren's laughter returned when Elinor visited. Michael began to stand more firmly against Caroline's subtle control, asserting the truth of his own experiences and memories. The daughter-in-law, confronted not with hostility but with undeniable reality, withdrew into reflection. She realized that Elinor's love was not only enduring but indestructible, built on decades of care, sacrifice, and genuine devotion. Elinor, sitting in her quiet home one evening, reflected on the journey. The betrayal had been sharp, cruel, and unexpected, but it had revealed something vital: her strength, her resilience, and her ability to fight with love rather than anger. She had turned heartbreak into clarity, manipulation into revelation, and absence into a renewed presence. Though the scars of betrayal would linger in memory, they were no longer wounds, they were reminders of endurance, courage, and the power of truth. Elinor had not only reclaimed her family, she had done so with grace, cleverness, and unwavering love. As she looked at photographs of Michael and the grandchildren, laughter frozen in time, she whispered into the quiet of her California home, "I am here. I always have been, and I always will be." A gentle smile curved her lips, not of triumph over another, but of victory in love, strength, and the quiet justice that only truth can bring.